We're at the entrance to Guilfoyle's volcano, which is a really wonderful project that I've been involved in, and it was completed about 2 years ago. And we really recreated a volcano, but it's a reservoir that holds water that we then use for irrigating the gardens. But what I really want to talk to you about today is actually how I've used plants in this garden and the way I use plants in any garden. Because while the scale of this project is quite large, the way we set out our plants, the way we select our plants is the same. Doesn't matter how big your garden is. In fact, if I'm even working in an area that is 1 metre by 1 metre, I'll still go through the same processes of working out what goes where, what textures are going to look good against other textures, what colours are going to look good with each other, and I really just start to map it out like a jigsaw piece. So I'm just going to show you, through the volcano planting, some of the things that I do when putting plants together. When I work with plants in the garden, the first thing is I try to understand that all the plants that I'm going to use must enjoy the same conditions. There's no point putting a plant that likes a lot of water next to a plant that doesn't require much water at all. So all the plants in this area can grow in full sun, require very little water, and enjoy the same sort of soil conditions. Once I understand that, I make a list of a big palette of plants that I'm going to use, and then I bring them together and I arrange them to maximise the effect of their form, colour and texture. And if we have a look just at this little planting combination here, I'm working with this wonderful Yucca desmentiana, which has this beautiful purple, dusty kind of purple colour. And I'm contrasting its form, which is quite upright and quite dramatic, to this much softer, textured and different form, which is a very prostrate form of this quite incredible Casuarina, which is a native plant. So we've also got exotic plant contrasting to native plant. And I don't have any problems using natives with exotics. It's all about the fact that they'll grow well together and that they'll look good together. So I've got the prostrate form and the very dramatic upright form. I'm going to move on now and we're going to look at some other different forms and colours that I've used together. One of my favourite plants, and it's just a great plant to use in Melbourne or in any parts of Australia, is Agave gemniflora. It is incredibly spiky, but it has this lovely, almost soft look to it. But if you touch that, that will really give you a needle piercing. But it has this lovely dome shape, and I've contrasted that to this very dramatic Alacantharia, or large bromeliad at the back. And then coming out of that is this, again, quite dramatic form of these Brahea palms. Again, very suitable. All these plants will grow very well in a Melbourne summer. And then I've put them together because of the form, their colour and their texture, which works well together. So one of the most important things about putting plants together is that you select plants for your given environment, the environment conditions that are existing in your garden. So I've selected my plants here to grow in Melbourne, and that's our rainfall, our summer climate and our soil types. I mean, just as it happens, these plants would grow quite well right up the east coast, right into Queensland, but I have selected them for a Melbourne environment, and you do the same at home. So that is the first principle in good garden design, is making sure the plants will grow with as fewer inputs as possible in your natural environment. So with arranging the plants in the volcano, which is an incredibly exciting project for me given all this plant material, and obviously I had a reasonable budget, but one of the most important things I did here was I repeat plants and I use plants in large numbers. Well, this sort of plant material can go horribly wrong if you've got one of those and one of those and one of those, because they're all fighting each other for attention. It's a bit like the only child at home. So what we try to do here is I use large drifts of the same plant, and I also repeat those plants in other ways. So it creates a rhythm which is a little bit simpler and a little bit easier on the eye. And I just think it holds the whole planting design together. And at home you can do the same thing. You might use a drift of trees out the front that you use out the back. You might use some shrubs and ground covers that you repeat along the driveway and that you pick up out the back again. And it tends to just give a little bit of a calming feel to the garden. All plants have different forms, and here's a couple of really classic examples. These are the pole cactus, and there's a whole range of different pole cactus, but they have incredibly vertical form. And a lot of people, these were quite popular in the 60s with the white pebble gardens, but they lost a little bit of favour, and for good reason, because they were generally used very poorly. And I don't use them a lot, but I found it very exciting in this garden to actually use this vertical form and try to contrast that against other forms of plants. And if we have a look at this amazing Yucca whipplei, that again, it's quite a prickly plant, but it has this very different form. It's a finer form, and I believe it contrasts quite beautifully to this very dramatic vertical form. Now, if I put another dramatic vertical form close to this, it may not give me that contrast. But what I'm trying to achieve here, both with the yucca, with this another amazing plant, which is Euphorbia medusa, and even these succulents, is that I'm keeping everything quite flat so that we get this very dramatic contrast between the vertical of the pole cactus and the flatter forms of the other plant material. And then added to that, just for a little bit of extra dynamic, is you get this really interesting finer foliage, which is really about the texture of the plant contrasting against that vertical form. So when I'm working with plants, I've already mentioned that I use form, colour and texture. But when I'm working with colour, it's not about flower colour. As much as I love flower colour, I always put my plants together with foliage colour in mind primarily. And here what we've got is this acid blue, beautiful kind of clear blue, against this yellowy colour, against the green of this euphorbia, which has got a slightly greenier little flower. So there is an example of a flower there, but it's actually the colour of the foliage is what I'm working with. And then this terminates in this quite amazing red colour, which is really, because of the winter, is got some purple tones in it. But all that is about the foliage of those plants, no flower colour. So we're now at the top of the volcano, and as you can see, we've refilled it back with water. It holds about a meg of water, 1 million litres, and we're reusing this for irrigation, which is why William Guilfoyle designed it in the first place. And likewise with the planting, while it's nothing like what William Guilfoyle may have imagined, the plant material is quite similar and echoes the ideas that William Guilfoyle used. And you can look over here and see some of that bold, dramatic planting that is still part of Guilfoyle's original design. A lot of the principles that I've talked about in terms of putting our plants together, the use of form and colour and texture, apply not only on a large scale like this, but in your home garden, whether it's a balcony garden, a small domestic block, or even a farm. It's good to, first of all, pull in the outside environment and see if you can link to that, and then work with those elements of form, colour and texture. Good luck.